Let's talk about authorization. We are done with the authentication. And authorization is a process of allowing the authenticated user to access some resources in your application. So, how are we going to implement authorization? Let's see the problem that we are facing without authorization. Let's get back to Postman, which is this one. At the moment, I have logged in. So if I go ahead and create a post, let's see the result. I'm going to change this one to some description too and use the same image. When I hit send, let's see, well, my server is not running. So let me run the server as that. And let me try again. And the post is being created. And if I log out, let's get into the users. And if I log out success. If I check my authentication status, it is false. And if I go ahead and create a post, and let me change this one to some description 3. And let's see. And still I can create, which means that we are not authorizing any user in your application. Either you are logged in or not, you can still create a post. This is where authorization comes in. So how are we going to do it? We are going to use a middleware to achieve this. And what is a middleware? A middleware is a function that have access to the request and then the response. Before a request will get into our server, we can check before hitting the controller. So let's get back to the backend, which is this one. And on the router here, which is the post one, we have these controllers for creating, fetching, and update. So we are going to create a middleware, and this middleware is to be in the middle here after the endpoint. Then our middleware function will be here, which is this place. So here, when a user hits this endpoint, it will go through one middleware that we are going to create before getting to the controller to create. So how are we going to create it? We are going to do it in the folder called middlewares. And I'm going to have a file as IsAuthenticated. And this is how you're going to create a middleware. You're going to pass in 3 arguments. So here as const IsAuthenticated, which is equal to error function. And in here we have access to request, response, and next. Make sure to pass in 3 arguments. This is how you create a middleware in Express. Request contains the information about the request, response, and next is a function given to us by Express. And this function will determine either we should move on to the next middleware or to exit the request or the response. So in here, if I log something like a middleware, now let me export as module.export equal to IsAuthenticated. So how are we going to use it? Well, inside the route, this is where we are going to use it. You look at the route that you want to protect. At the moment, we want to protect creating of a post. So if I require the IsAuthenticated, I'm going to pass it as the second argument to the route handler. Let's look at the flow over here. First, when a user visits /create, in this case, in our Postman here, this is a route. Then, when a user hits on send, the request was sent to our middleware here. Then inside here, we have the logic to decide either to move on to the next middleware or to exit it. And this is the next middleware, which is this one. So now with this one, if I save it and hit send for the create, as you can see, our request is hanging. Can you tell me why is it so? Well, remember, because we are not calling next in the middleware here that, hey, move on to the next middleware, in this case, this one. So if you check in the console, we have a middleware, which means that this one is being called. Awesome. So if I say by calling next, it means that it will move to the next middleware, which is this. Now let's see, before saving it, now let's cancel it, and then let me save this one. And now if I hit send, as you can see, it has been created. So before creating, we can check if a user is logged in. In case we are handling the token by ourselves, unless we pass the token as part of the request header, and then we are going to check that one. But since we are using Passport, Passport is going to check that token for us from the cookie. So now, how are we going to do it? Let's bring in the Passport package, which is this as Passport, and the auto import is fine. So now I'm going to remove everything from here, and I'm going to use passport.authenticate, and then as a function call, and then as iffy. And this is called immediately invoked function, meaning that as soon as this middleware called, Passport is going to call this one for us automatically. So we're going to pass in what is called rec response, and then the next here. And inside the function call here, we're going to pass in this argument. We are going to use what is called JWT, because we want to get a token from the request header. And then as a second argument, we're going to pass in the object as that. And here, we're going to specify that we are not using session, but instead we are using JWT. So here, we will say false. And then the third argument is going to be a callback function as that. So in the callback function, we have the error, and then we have the actual user, and then the info. So let's go ahead and then console log these guys as that, which is error, and then user, and then info. Let's try out. If I hit send, our server will keep hanging. But if you check in the console or terminal, let's see, we have no auth, meaning that the user is not logged in. And we have it on the property called info. We have error now, and user is false, and info, no auth token found. Awesome. So we are going to check in case you don't have a token. But if I provide, or let me log in, let me cancel, and let me check the status. Indeed, it is false. But if I log in, and then if I create a post, let's check the terminal. This time around, we have the info being undefined, and we have the user as that, and error being set to null. So with this one, we are going to place or keep the user in the request object. So let's continue to implement this middleware. Now I can remove these console logs. So here, we're going to check in case we have an error or there is no user. Then we are going to return, then bring in res.status, then pass in the status code as 401, and that is not authorized, and then .json as an object, and then provide a message. And the message is going to be, in case we have a value on the info, then grab the property on the info as .message. Otherwise, we're going to use our custom error message as login required. No auth token or no token found. Alright, and then let's provide the error message in case we're going to have one as error. If you have an error, then let's use the error.message. I'm using optional chaining to avoid using AND operator. Otherwise, we're going to say undefined. Alright, but in case the user is found, then we are going to place the user in the request object. Remember, the request is an object, therefore we can add our own property to it. So here I will say rec.user. This is our own property name. You can use any name of your choice. And here you can assign what you want to save. But I don't want to save the entire of this user in the request object. I think it has removed, but I want to save some properties. So here is going to be the user dot underscore ID. Now if I go ahead and send, let's see the error where I forgot to call next. Sorry guys, so here as call next, and it's going to be as return, then call next as that. Let's try again, and I have the data, but if I log out and try again, as you can see, no auth token, meaning that I'm not logged in. But if I log in, now let's check success. Let me try again. Is this one? Yeah. And if I create a post, now I can create, which means that everything is working fine. So now let's protect this route. I want to protect, which is deleting of a post unless you are logged in. And also for update, for get single and get all is going to be public. At this point, you may be asking, do we have to modify the front end? The answer is no, because we are using cookie with JWT, which means that anytime you make request, the cookie will be sent to the server automatically.